And welcome back to another lesson of Logos and Letters. My name is Liam. Let's continue on. So we were looking at the ability to receive contraries, to have these contraries, take them up, and then still be the same thing, even though the substance is experiencing one and the other pair of opposites. It still remains the same. So let's move on from that idea and look at opinion, because it's found that not just substance, but it seems to be opinion and statement share this in common. All right, so where was that? It was around here somewhere. Here. Hogar autos logos aletheis kai pseudes ainai dokai. Right? For a statement can be appears to be true and false. Right? So statement here, the man is praying. All right, so let's give him a name, Nemo. Let's call him Nemo, Oudis in Greek. So Nemo is praying. Right? I truly believe that. I make that statement. Right? But then you see Nemo. You see Nemo much, much later, and he's not praying. Here he's just admiring, he's worshipping, he's celebrating almost. Was I false? Am I false? Am I true? Well, you think to yourself, how could I be true if he's not? I said Nemo is praying, but he's not praying. Well, am I false to say Nemo is praying? But then you see Nemo and he's not praying. So some might be thinking yes and no. And that's what Aristotle is saying. That's what the philosopher is saying. A statement can be true and false. It appears to be true and false. And why? It all has to do with time. Reference to time. But let's continue exploring. Hoion ialeithes ie hologos to katheistai tina anastantos auto ho auto au hutos logos pseudes estai. Right? He lays it out really nicely here, really clearly. All right, so if one says a true statement, if the statement is true, that someone is sitting, to tina katheistai, that some particular person is sitting, upon the standing of the person, upon the standing of them, the one in the same statement is now false, will be false. So have a look. I say to you, Nemo is praying. Later on you see Nemo and he's not praying. So the statement is true and false, because it was true at the time that I said it, and it was false at the time that you tested it, that you evaluated it. Okay? Because at the time, he was not. He changed his action. But at the time that I said it, it was true. So it appears to be that statements can be true and false. Right? It's a function, a feature of them. It's not fixed. But the time reference is key. You have to take into consideration the time reference of the speaker. At what particular time are they thinking or referencing when they said X or Y or Z? Let's continue on. Igar, right? So hosaltos de kai epites doxes. Before we move on, he's also saying the same thing about opinion. If I couldn't see someone and I was just considering what they might be doing at the time, let's say here, David. If I said I couldn't see David, neither could you, and you asked me, what's King David doing right now? And I shrug my shoulders and I say, I'm pretty sure that he is playing his harp, reciting a song, composing. And I truly believe that. And you listen to what I have, my opinion, you evaluate it to be pretty good, then you think it's true. It might be true, but later on, you might realize it to be false. So it's the same as a statement. It might be true the moment I said that. He could have been playing his harp, reciting, doing poetry. But mere moments later, he might lay down that harp and do something else. He might have a drink of wine. He might eat a meal. He might have a conversation with a friend. He might pray. He might go for a walk. So just mere moments after I said it, it becomes a false opinion to hold. Because I still hold that opinion, even though he's changed what he's doing. And now my opinion has gone from being true about David to being false. So, in the same way, opinion and statement have this ability to be true and false. Igartis alethos doxasdoi. So, if someone is truly opining, if someone is opining is like a really good English word to translate this with. If someone is truly holding the opinion that some particular person, katheistai, is sitting, anastantos autu pseudos doxasai. So someone might have the opinion that someone is sitting, and it's true, and it's a true opinion. They're actually completely correct in that moment. But the very moment that that person upon whom they're opining about who they're thinking stands up, well, now they're telling lies. Now they're being a liar. Okay? Even though that person persists in their opinion and holds firm to their statement, they've gone from being true in one moment to being false in the next. It all has to do with time. Tein autein ekon periautu doxan. Right, so holding ekon about this opinion, holding this opinion the same. So even though they hold the same opinion, they're holding the same opinion about this person, the same person, they've gone from being true to false. In a way, this is a very good lesson for conversation, because it's teaching us that there is flexibility. A person can be wrong at a time, but a person can be right at another. A person can be right at one time and then wrong at another. It all has to do with time. That's why verbs with their tense, with the tenses that come with verbs, are super important. And being clear with the language that you're using in relation to the time that you're talking about is very important. Understanding the context of the time that someone is speaking about is very important. That's why people who are biblical scholars really, really pay attention to the tense and the mood of the verbs that they read, especially if they're reading from the original languages, because of what we just learned. Of that statements and opinions really get their truth from the reference to the time. So someone is not a liar if their opinion is currently a lie. Because if their opinion was true when they said it, then they are not a liar. Someone is a liar if they tell a lie outright, just from the get-go. It was a lie. But if they at the time that they said their statement or their opinion, they were telling the truth, they're not a liar. And that's a very important, refreshing sort of idea for us to hold in our minds, that even though beliefs might become outdated about a thing, it doesn't mean that you're a liar or you're a bad person, or that you should blame yourself or feel guilty for holding an outdated opinion. So if at one point you thought that Santa Claus traveled around the world and gave kids presents, you don't need to feel silly about holding that opinion, all right? Because you truly felt that it was the right thing to say at the time, but experience has taught you better. Now, with a more common experience for adults, you could say that you were doing something. You could say that you were writing and you were studying. So someone sends you a text and they say, "What are you doing right now?" And you say, "I'm studying." But then a few minutes later, you get up and you start doing something else. And the person reads your text message. And when they read your text message, it says, "I am studying." But you're not anymore. The moment they read your text message, you were not studying. Does that make you a liar? Of course not. Because at the time that you read it and that you sent it, it was the truth. It was the truth. Now it is not. So, truth is always said in relation to the current circumstances. All right? You can't predict the future. You can't predict when that person will read your text message and then adjust accordingly and know for certain what you will be doing at that time. Impossible. That's only for God to do. So, we're setting moral and ethical boundaries about conversation and how serious we take it when we find out that something's not true anymore. Because as time progresses and entropy and change occurs, we're going to find that the truth changes. Right? So if you saw this double rainbow and you said, "Hey, look, come over here, there's a double rainbow." By the time that the person comes over, there's only a single rainbow. The person looks at you and go, "Oh, why are you lying? There's only a single rainbow here. There's no double rainbow." But you weren't lying. You were telling the truth. At that time, there was a double rainbow. All right? But things change. Thank God for that. Things change. And the statement, which was true, is now false to hold. This is the final conclusion that we need to make before we conclude this lesson at this point. Actually, it's down here. Idetis kai tuto paratekoito alla toige tropoi differai. But only in manner does it differ. Okay, so for if someone was to take up this position, paratekoito, only in manner does it differ. What he's saying is, if you go back to this example of the double rainbow, it only differs in manner if someone were to say, "Hey, come and look at this rainbow," and you were to say, "Come and look at this double rainbow." Why is it different in manner? Well, the first person is telling the truth because there is a rainbow, and you are telling the truth because there is a double rainbow. Now, the person comes over to investigate, and they see that there's only a single rainbow. The double rainbow has gone. Time has changed. Your statement that was true is now false to believe. Why it's different in manner is that the first person who said that there's a rainbow, doesn't specify anything else about it, is still correct. The opinion that they formulated and they still hold is still correct. The opinion that you formulated was correct and is now false. You are not a liar. Your statement as well is not a lie because you do not hold to the fact that it is a double rainbow. AKA, if you make a statement, you do not need to hold on to that statement when things change. And you do not need to expect that a person still holds their same opinion when things change. That's the concluding lesson. It's strange to use a double rainbow to get here, but the expectation that someone still holds their same statement and same opinion after circumstances have changed is unrealistic. Of course, the person, if they realize that circumstances have changed, may have or probably do have a different statement or opinion to make. At the time, the circumstances were different. So what does that require of us? That requires of us that we need to be patient people. We need to be just and fair people. If someone 10 years ago believed the earth was flat, you cannot then expect that they still have that same opinion if you know that person understands things better. Okay? Maybe an easier example is if a child, maybe around the same age as these children, believe that there is a monster under the bed, and they truly believe that, you cannot then meet that same person when they're an adult and still expect that they think there is a monster under the bed. Circumstances have changed. Their wisdom, their knowledge, their understanding of the world, their fears have changed. Okay, so at one point they firmly believed this, but we cannot then say they always believe it, that they always cling to it. All right? If someone says, I'm tired, you can't expect that the next day they're still tired, and you wouldn't. After a sleep, they feel better. So let's be gentle with one another. When someone claims something, let's not expect that they always hold the same opinion. It would only differ about things that aren't related to time. So if you're speaking about eternal or fixed things, then that's different. Or necessary things, that's different too. If you held the belief that a number is either odd or even, then you can expect that person to hold that belief, because that's a necessary thing. Of course the number's going to be odd or even, right? You don't need to check on them about those things. But about contingent things, you do need to ask, there is the expectation that they have a different belief. So it's contingent that someone is sitting, but they can stand up again. All right, so it's contingent that someone might, or something might be warm, and it's contingent that it might be cold. It might be weak, or wicked, or not good, and at another time it might be excellent. These are contingent things. So some statements need clarification. They need a conversation about whether or not the person still holds to that same statement or belief or opinion, and other things do not. And it's good to clarify that. It's good to understand that, and it's good to know that that it's not either or. It's not everything needs clarification. That would be a headache, a waste of our time. And it's not also that nothing needs clarification. Okay, that would be painful and cause headaches. So we'll leave that there. This was a lesson not only on substance and contraries and opposites and opinions, but it was also a lesson on rhetoric, on dialect and conversation and ethics as well. Okay, so especially about not just truth and falsity, but about being a liar and someone who's trying their best to tell the truth. Okay, because there's a big gap between them. So we'll leave that there. As always, si semper fortis in opere tuo, and I will see you next time.